Order. Please stand, His Honor.
Let us pray. Lord, on this morning, Thursday, we pray for your gift of love. That we may know your love to us, we may show love to one another. Lord God, whose Son, Jesus Christ, commanded us to love one another, take from us all that leads to uncharitable thoughts and actions. That by showing gentleness to all those we meet, we open their eyes to the transformative love that has been shown to us in the same Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
This House is in session. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, February 27, 2024 to be deferred. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the aforesaid minutes be deferred.
Second that.
Questions that the aforementioned minutes be deferred. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned minutes are hereby deferred.
Announcements by His Honor, the Speaker.
I am receipt of a letter from the Auditor General. There, Mr. Speaker, special audit report on the acquisition and construction of steel frame housing units by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. I have the honor of submitting to you for laying before the House of the Assembly in accordance with Section 77, subsection 2 and Section 77, subsection 5 of the Public Finance Management Act 2019-1, my special audit report on the acquisition and construction of steel frame housing units by the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Maintenance. In accordance with Section 77, subsection 5, the report should be laid before the House of Assembly as soon as possible after its receipt. Kindly let me know when the report has been laid. Yours faithfully, Leah Trotman, Auditor General.
Messages from Her Excellency the President, petitions, papers.
Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I'm commanded to lay the annual report of the Dighton Griffith Secondary School for the year September 1st, 2021 to August 31st, 2022. I'm also commanded to lay the annual reports and audited financial statements of Needham's Point Development, Inc. and Needham's Point Holdings Limited for the year ended March 31st, 2022, as well as the annual reports and audited financial statements of Hotels and Resorts Limited for the year ended March 31st, 2022, and the annual reports and audited financial statements of the Barbados Aircraft and Aviation Services Company Limited for the year ended March 31st, 2022.
Government notices, private members' notices, notices of questions, reports from select committees, first readings of bills, statements by ministers, congratulatory and/or obituary speeches, personal explanations, motions for leave of absence, oral replies to questions, notices of motions for the adjournment of the House on matters of urgent public importance. Orders of the day.
Honourable Leader, Government Business.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move the suspension of Standing Orders 6, 16, 18, 20, 42 subsection 5, 43, and 44 for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Question is that the aforementioned standing orders be suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. The aforementioned standing orders are hereby suspended for the remainder of the day's sitting.
Government business.
Government business is the order of the day.
Order number 9, in the name of the Honorable Acting Attorney General, Minister of Legal Affairs, to move the second reading of the Notaries Public Bill 2024.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, there are few times that I have risen to speak with as much or as great of an internal smile as I actually have now. So it would be entirely inappropriate for me to do skin cuffings in here and do cartwheels over what may appear to some people to be one of the most mundane amendments that we're making, and it having little to no impact on the average Barbadian, many of whom would not even know what we're talking about. But because of the import it does have when it is required, those who have had cause to use it, or worse yet, suffer from the difficulty in being able to access the service, will understand what it is I'm talking about. What am I talking about, sir? I'm talking about notaries public. What is a notary? Barbadians are more familiar with the term justice of the peace. Forever. I think the British system and our local system have acknowledged the role of a justice of the peace. Somebody who is not necessarily trained in law, but who lives in a neighborhood, is familiar with people, and is able, having taken an oath to uphold the law, to carry out certain functions that allow business to happen. Simple things, sir, like I may have back in the days when you wrote a note to a shopkeeper and said, look, please give X person 12 eggs and a ham, and you sign it, right? Your signature back then carried a lot of weight, whether it's on something as simple as that or on an oath or on a mortgage. And back then, the person charged with verifying or authenticating a signature, if there was some dispute, was that person called the notary public. Called the justice of the peace. So the justice of the peace was the person in Barbados who, when a signature had to be authenticated, is the person who would write on the document that appeared before me was one, I was about to say Ralph A. Thorne, just by reference, but let's not go there. Appeared before me one John Doe, right? Who signed this document in my presence, and I hereby acknowledge that this is his true and correct signature. So anybody who got the document now and saw the seal of the Justice of the Peace and saw the Justice of the Peace effectively had countersigned and validated it, can take it to the bank, literally take it to the bank as proof that the signature was the correct signature. This has served us for a very long time, sir. And the Justice of the Peace was a very important person in the community. The Justice of the Peace, I think, count the same pension checks. In some instances, once a year, they would have to validate that the person who's receiving this thing is still alive, right? Other things like that. If a mortgage document, if a document had to be done, they would count the same saying that although the document come to you and the person is not there presenting it, this is their signature and I saw them do it, right? So they were a big person in the community, and they were for a large measure persons from within the community who had some measure of influence within the community and were persons who were generally held in high esteem within their community. These included priests, shopkeepers, in many instances retired school teachers, right? Community leaders, retired police officers, people like that. People who were generally held in high esteem. And this worked well and good, sir, within Barbados. Because within Barbados, who ain't know you, know somebody know you. So it was easy to accept the role of the Justice of the Peace and the documents validated by the Justice of the Peace. However, sir, the Justice of the Peace regime had no real application outside of the British system, outside of our system. So we started to run into some difficulties when documents were required to be used as evidence overseas in a non-British territory. And you then had to have the signatures or the document itself validated or authenticated. Simple things, sir, like if I want to send a picture of my passport by a data page. In Barbados, I can turn my passport. If it is required for evidence, let's say United States for something, a land transaction, an estate transaction, I'm not sending my passport up there. So you send a copy, but how do we know the copy is valid? In Barbados, a Justice of Peace can certify that copy as having been seen by him, the original having been seen. But that Justice of Peace has no weight outside of Barbados. So to go to a old shopkeeper and say, just sign off here saying that there's a true copy of my passport. It reaches New York, and they say, but who's this? What is this? We don't know about this. So the role of the notary, sir, gained importance as Barbados started to deal more and more with outside influences. What is a notary? What is the actual definition of a notary, sir? A notary public is a public official constituted by law to serve the public in non-contentious matters. Non-contentious, we know, are things that don't necessarily involve court, and generally on the civil side of things as opposed to the criminal side. The notary's work varies from certifying that company and business documents and transactions have been duly signed before him or her, to authenticating personal documents and information for immigration or emigration purposes, or to apply to marry or work abroad. And notaries specialize in administering oaths and affirmations for domestic and international transactions and documentations for use abroad. And in recent years, sir, the need for notaries has grown significantly as Barbados trades more and more outside of its borders, and our documentation needs to be verified more and more outside of its borders. Now, sir, we do have a regime of notaries, and historically, the notaries in Barbados have all been from the public service, and not just from the public service. Initially, so I believe it was limited to registrars of the various departments and deputy registrars. So that would be registrars of titles, and generally the registrars of titles will only certify something dealing with land transactions. The registrar of corporate affairs and deputy registrar of corporate affairs, and invariably, initially, they only wanted to deal with things to do with companies. The registrar is Supreme Court and deputy registrar is Supreme Court. So straight off the bat, we see that we're limited. Initially, we were limited to about 6 persons. The decision was taken in 2017, sir, to expand the categories of persons to include the following: the Solicitor General, the Deputy Solicitor General, Permanent Secretary in the Office of the AG, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs, PS in the Ministry of International Business, DPS in the Office of the Attorney General, DPS in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, DPS in the Ministry of Home Affairs, DPS in the Ministry of International Business, Supervisor of Insolvency, Registrar of the Supreme Court, Deputy Registrar of the Supreme Court, Registrar of Companies, and the Deputy Registrar of Companies. Now, once again, we have a bit of a problem. All of these persons are public officials. And without sounding bad, sir, these persons can only be accessed between X time and Y time, usually between 8 o'clock or 8:30 and 4:30. Back in 2017, when this came up, when this amendment came up, I made the point, I was in the other place at the time, sir, and I made the point that we were missing the perfect opportunity to expand it a lot further than that. If we do transactions overseas, sir, you may have dealt with matters, legal matters overseas. Attorneys over a certain amount of call are allowed to authenticate documents, and most of them become notaries automatically. Even if you don't require a notary for the purpose of taking an oath or certifying a document within the state in which you operate, the attorney over a certain amount of call and accountants are automatically taken to be able to administer oaths or to certify certain documents. Now, sir, we made an amendment in Barbados that allowed attorneys to certify, to take oaths for affidavits for use in court proceedings. And that was done as a stopgap because we accepted that in many instances, if you had an urgent application, if you had something that was immediately relevant for a business transaction, that the ability to access a notary or some other person qualified to take an oath was often very, very difficult. And it doesn't make sense to file a document requiring an oath, the oath has not been taken before a valid person, and then you come in afterwards, because that's fraud. So for pure business efficacy, for the ease, we keep talking about the ease of doing business, for the ease of doing business, the amendment in 2017 was insufficient. We expanded from a limited category of public officials to a slightly less limited category of public officials. But that was not sufficient. And quite frankly, sir, we were spinning top in mud. That was taking incremental steps when you already know where the goalpost is. If you know where the goalpost is, it makes sense to reach that goalpost in one go. And I predicted at the time that very likely we will have to come back to expand that category further. And sir, here we are. So it gave me almost a malicious pleasure to be the person to actually lead this particular debate. No, no, sir, let's give a practical example of why this is necessary. I think it's often critical, it's often instructive if people can actually see a story as it develops. I personally was involved in a matter, sir, that required someone in Barbados to submit a bid for something in New York. And the bid had to go in by 4 p.m. Barbados time. 4 p.m. Barbados time. I don't know why the person waited so late, but you know, they waited late. So come the day, we started at 9 o'clock trying to get the thing notarized. The signature had to be notarized because the documents are quite clear. They don't say, please certify in front of an oath taker. They don't say, please do it in front of a competent person. It says documents must be certified by a notary public. If it says that, then notary public it has to be. So we literally called every single person at the time, which was the limited category, at the time listed as a notary public in Barbados. Corporate affairs did not want to do it because it had nothing to do strictly with companies. So the registrar of corporate affairs and the deputy registrar of corporate affairs said they're not comfortable to sign that. We tried at the Supreme Court. The registrar was not there at the time, and the deputy registrar was unavailable. We figured, well, you know what? Sometime before then, before the end of the day, somebody had to come back. So at about 1 o'clock, we called, people were out to lunch. I then explained the urgency and I asked for a number to contact the persons at. No number was forthcoming because back in them days, they didn't give out public officers' personal cell phone numbers. We coming on to 3 p.m., sir. 3 p.m., the document had to be sent off. We had to verify it. We just had to verify it was sent off. You had to scan the documents, show that the documents had been thing, and verify that it was sent off. 3 p.m., sir, we are scrambling, and by now, $4 million is hanging in the balance for want of a notarial certificate and an apostille. We got that. I managed to reach, I don't want to call the person's name, I managed to reach somebody for whom I am forever grateful. And they were on vacation. They came down to the registry and they certified the document, put on the stamp. We were able to get the document off. And interestingly, the Barbadian company did in the end win the bid. But the point is, had it not been for the fact that somebody was kind enough and saw the importance of it to disturb themselves, to leave their vacation and come down and do what was necessary, $4 million would have been burned. Now, why? In the States and in other countries, notaries public are as common as justices' pieces are in Barbados. If you go into, not Target, and any of those places, sir, the copy place, the place that does the copies, right? In the States, you will see one of the persons who might be a cashier or whatever would have next to their thing Notary Public on it by their station. You can go and get your document notarized there by them. That person carries the same weight as the registrar and deputy registrar of the Supreme Court, but it's just a different system. So notaries up there are just accepted as the office for oath-taking and verification of documents in the same way that JPs are largely accepted for in Barbados. But JPs will work here. Lawyers will work here. But from the time you now have to export that document to somewhere else, the acknowledged entity has the title of Notary Public. And the only ones that we have are the ones that I just listed, which is a very limited and select group of persons. What is intended to be done, sir, by this current legislation? The business community has been crying out for a very long time. The legal fraternity has been crying out for a very long time. The accountants and anybody who does business overseas, sir, has been crying out for a very, very long time. So we have heard you. We've come today to do what we should have done in 2017. We're expanding the categories of persons who can be notaries public. Now understand, sir, I say we expanded the categories because you satisfy the minimum requirement does not mean you get it as of right. You still have to apply to get it because there must be some ability to approve certain persons and also to take away if the person is not functioning properly. Who are those persons? No, sir. Attorneys of over 15 years call. Accountants who have been practicing for over 15 years. And there's also provisions, sir, for members of the public to apply to be qualified as notaries public, but they would then have to do some sort of course, some sort of training and pass the training to be able to get that certification. Now, sir, why do we have it as such? As it stands now, our JPs have to get training. Before, when the lawyers, if a lawyer wanted to be a JP, we did not set or acknowledge their legal training. The lawyers who are JPs had to go through the same basic training that the Justice of the Peace had to, which was unnecessary, but it was the only system that they had. Since then, we've acknowledged that the legal training itself already has built in the ability to understand the importance of what it is you're doing, the ability to know the importance of an oath, because we take oaths every day in court. The ability to recognize the importance of verifying a signature, because that's what we do as our bread and butter. So even for lawyers to certify documents, when the amendment was made, the lawyer did not have to undertake any particular training or account any particular training because they are already familiar with the basics of it. I don't want to undersell or diminish the importance of it, but sir, it's not brain surgery. You are, as anyone else can do, using your common sense. If somebody brings a document because they don't want to send, like if my good friend, sir, from Christchurch West was asked to send his marriage certificate, if you can find it, was asked to send his marriage certificate, sir, overseas for some reason, he may not want to release that very important document, sir, out of his control. So what does he do? He photocopies it. But some internationally recognized person must be able to say that this document, this photocopy, is a true and accurate representation of the marriage certificate of one member for Christchurch West and one Mrs. member for Christchurch West. The original having been seen by me. So that now stands in the, it's a certified copy effectively. That now stands in the place with the same evidential weight and value of the original document. So you don't have to let go of your original documents. If there's a question, sir, as to whether or not an affidavit was signed, you want, I mean, frauds exist. There are people who will forge your signature for anything if it's of benefit to them. So an affidavit saying that I know this person and that one John Doe, also known as Jonathan Doe, also known as John Dozer, right, is one and the same person. It is obviously in his interest to verify that he's those three people, or he's known by those names. And an affidavit coming from Wilfred Abrams saying that, sir, may not have the signature of one Wilfred Abrams. So you need to be comfortable that the signature on the affidavit, which verifies this most important piece of evidence, because an affidavit is actually evidence, it's sworn evidence, or a sworn statement of fact. The affidavit verifying this sworn piece of evidence was actually signed by the person who they say it was signed by. Now, in Barbados, the lawyers can actually witness that now. But if you want it to be used overseas, then it's of no import. It has to be certified by a notary public. The notary public has a specific form of seal. Some of them, if you go to the Supreme Court, sir, when they notarize a document, they have the imprint seal so that you can literally feel the stamp and the embossment, if that's a word. They have a raised seal that you can actually feel the texture of the seal. And then they have a golden seal, which is stamped over that. And then they sign at the bottom, verifying that they are a notary public. So it's all official. Anybody can now take full confidence that that document has been validly witnessed, or that document is a copy of the document which it purports to represent. We do them all the time now, sir. A notary, and it's not just for documents overseas. Recently, some financial institutions in Barbados have been asking for notarized copies of documents in Barbados as well. So more and more, the weight attached to a notarial certificate is cropping up more and more internally in Barbados. So we're at the point now where, sir, 6 doesn't cut it. The expanded amount, I didn't count them, let's call them 15, doesn't cut it. It is so much a factor of everyday life that we need to have them a lot more accessible. And there's no good person, there's no good reason that anybody who undertakes a course of training and thus qualifies themselves should not have the same power. We in the British system, sir, we were too much, in many instances, on pomp and ceremony. We were too much on titles. It was all about exclusion. It must be exclusive. That rarefied air of notary public must be exclusive. It's not that exclusive anywhere else. It is functional. It is practical. It is utilitarian. For us to now improve our ease of doing business, we actually have to make all of the avenues that are required to do business a lot easier and a lot more accessible. And this, sir, is one of those. Now, if I just take us through some of it, sir. 1 second. A person, sir, pursuant to paragraph 3, a person can be appointed as a notary public if he satisfies the requirement for appointment under this act. What are those? Any person holding or acting in the public office specified in the first schedule should be ex officio. By ex officio, we mean that they get it by virtue of their office. Shall be ex officio a notary public in Barbados. A person may be appointed as a notary if that person, A, is a citizen or permanent resident of Barbados. So in Barbados, you have to be a citizen or a permanent resident. The lesser status of immigrant status is not going to work. And if you're a non-national and not a citizen and not a resident, you can't get it either. So a citizen or permanent resident of Barbados, if you are the holder of a CARICOM skilled national certificate and you're ordinarily resident in Barbados, because, sir, you have to be somebody connected to the country in which you're providing the service. You're a notary public in and for Barbados. You have to have never been convicted of an offense punishable by imprisonment. Never been found guilty of any act that constitutes misconduct in a professional respect or misconduct under this act. So any lawyer who has been disbarred, any accountant who's been struck off their role, any doctor who has been removed from practicing, none of you will qualify. You cannot have been a judge bankrupt. That is basically it, sir, and you have to meet all the criteria specified in the section. Now, a person, this is the important part, a person is eligible for appointment if that person is an attorney at law who's been practicing law in Barbados for at least 15 years and who is in good standing with the Barbados Bar Association. Or if you're a certified public or chartered accountant who's been practicing in Barbados for at least 15 years and who is in good standing with a recognized accounting body, or C, possesses at least 10 years professional or business experience in Barbados and is of good character. I think that should be 15 years, sir. Possesses at least 15 years professional or business experience in Barbados and of good character. Every person other than an attorney at law shall complete a course of training prescribed by the Attorney General. So, once you meet the minimal qualifications, you have to undergo the course of training. So I correct something I said a little bit earlier, sir. So the accountants will still have to undergo the course of training as well. But they will be qualified once they've been in practice for at least 15 years. Now, sir, what do you have to do to be appointed as a notary public? You have to submit an application writing to the registrar, and it should be accompanied by the following documents: proof of the applicant's citizenship or permanent residence, and 2 character references, one of which must be from among the following persons: an employer or former employer, justice of the peace, a notary public, a minister of religion, a police officer of the rank of inspector or above, a certified public or chartered accountant, an attorney at law, a medical doctor, or a member of parliament. And then you have the normal things, sir: photograph, police certificate of character, proof of admission to practice law in Barbados, etc. The person who is appointed as a notary public has to deposit with the registrar an impression of the embossed notarial seal in the form to be used by them as a notary public and pay the prescribed fee to the registrar. If the seal is going to be pretty much the same, persons may personalize the seal and put their name in the seal. So the seal has to be approved and the seal has to be registered, because if, in case of any doubt as to whether the seal is valid, then the registrar, the person responsible for keeping these records, has to be able to check that seal against the seal that you have registered as your official seal, and that forms part of the validity validation process. Obviously, there's a fee to be paid, sir, and upon appointment as a notary public and the payment of the fee, the registrar shall issue a notary public certificate to the person appointed as a notary public in the form set out in the 6th schedule. Every year, sir, in the official gazette, in the month of February, an alphabetical list of the persons who've obtained the certification for that year will be published, and fees have to be paid. The registrar shall keep the registrar of notaries public, sir, which will have every person who's appointed a notary public under the act, the date of the appointment, the address, and the profession of the person. And the registrar may remove from the roll the name of any person whose appointment has been revoked under the act. Now, also, sir, the renewal and payment of fees, as applies to most of us, most professions, if you don't pay the fees by the 31st day of January, I think you get a penalty of equivalent to 1/2 of the annual fee. Upon payment of the fee, you'll be reinstated. All right? The acts that they're allowed to perform are the acts set in the 7th schedule, which is basically most of what I told you before. Sir, proceedings for misconduct, suspension, revocation. The appointment of a notary may be suspended by the registrar if the notary allows his name to be used by another person to perform notarial acts. So this grant and certification, sir, is a personal certification. It can't be delegated. You can't tell your secretary, just put on our stamp for me. If the person charges or accepts a fee for notarial act in contravention of Section 9 or fails to act in accordance with a notice from the registrar. The appointment of a notary public may be revoked if the notary public is convicted of an offense punishable by imprisonment, adjudged a bankrupt, deemed unfit, and the High Court has made an order appointing a receiver for that notary public. If they're found guilty of an act that constitutes misconduct, whether in his capacity as a notary public or in his professional occupation, or has been found negligent in the discharge of his duty. And when the appointment of a notary is suspended or revoked, the registrar shall endorse a notation of the suspension in the registrar of notaries to remove the name of the notary public from the register as the case may be. The other thing, sir, that the notary has to do, a notary has to obviously notify the registrar within 30 days of the occurrence of any of the following events. You have to notify of a change of address, change of status or nationality or permanent residence, a change of professional occupation. And the notary as well has to keep a register of all notarial acts. So if I notarize the birth certificate of the Honourable Member for St. Philip South, I have to write in my register that on this day I appeared before me and I notarized his birth certificate. If you are witnessing an affidavit, you have to make a notation. You have to keep an accurate record because what you're doing is validating evidence. What you're doing is certifying important documents. So it can be that you do it and you send it on and somebody comes back to you and it's called to proof and you actually can't remember. You actually have to keep a record of all you have done because if it is challenged, you must be able to say and verify that it has been done, or if you don't have it in your register, that is proof that somebody was fraudulently acting on your behalf. So, sir, that is basically it in relation to this piece of legislation. If I generally speak, sir, to the fact that we not just need to look at this, but I believe it is incumbent upon us who use the system, who use all the systems in Barbados to weigh in. There's now a Department of Citizenship engagement within the Prime Minister's office, sir. Persons who are doing business or who are encountering difficulties in doing business or doing simple things, you need to weigh in. Quite often, people believe that those in authority know everything. And I guess there are some of those persons in authority like to convey the impression that they know everything. I'm not looking at anybody. But sir, people assume that we know where the difficulties lie, the blockages lie. Maybe the difficulty that you have experienced in dealing with a particular government department or a process is peculiar to you, and you're the first person it's happened to. But chances are, if it has happened to you, it will likely happen to somebody else. So it's only by giving the feedback that we can then correct the things that need to be corrected. This one, sir, it has taken a while to come here. And as I said, the last amendment enough was not done on the last amendment, but the business community has kept at it. And the lawyers have kept at it. And the bar has kept at it. And the international business community has kept at it. So we have heard the cry and we've adjusted. But there are a number of areas, sir, quite frankly, that I actually believe can do with some improvement as well. If I may use the example of the Immigration Department. The Immigration Department used to get a lot of concerns and a lot of complaints about their processes and their policies, the way they did things, the length of time it took to do things, some of the documentation that was being asked for, whatnot. And I took the opportunity, sir, to sit down with every single head of the Immigration Department, every single head of department under the Immigration Department. And we literally went through every single process of the Immigration Department, everyone. What is required for in a work permit? Why are you asking for this? I understand why it used to be asked for, but now that we have technology, do you still need this? What is the mischief you're trying to correct? What is it that you actually want? We then, sir, went through work permits, immigrant status, residency, citizenship, everything, and tried to take out unnecessary steps. For example, persons who were coming to get a passport, who had lost a passport, who they could not find their passport, they had to go to the police station and fill out a form to say the passport was missing. And invariably they said the passport was stolen. People went, perjured themselves, fill out a form, made a report to the police that the passport was stolen. This is to get a new passport. Why? Back when that police report was required, we were not digital. The passport was, the actual physical presentation of the passport was necessary to effect something. If your passport was not expired, your passport only became invalid if the date for the renewal of the passport had passed. So if somebody turned up with the passport in that period of time, then there was nothing to say that the passport was not valid. So if they wanted to cancel a passport, for example, you had to physically bring the passport in, and they cut the end off the passport, so that if somebody presents a passport to you with the end missing, you know that passport has been canceled. But we kept all of the requirements before giving somebody a new passport. They had to bring in the old one to cut off the end. We now have passports that are scannable. For any time they scan your passport, what comes up on that screen is all your information. All the information you submitted, where you went to last, if you were deported from Barbados, if there's a negative reference against you somewhere, if Interpol looking for you, if whoever, all that comes up when they scan the passport. If your passport has been revoked, it comes up. You no longer physically need to bring in the passport to get it cut. But we were still requiring people to bring in the passport to get it cut. So a lot of things are being required within our public service only because no one has changed them yet, where the practical application has long since become irrelevant. Now, if you wish, sir, you can go and change your passport as many times as you want, once you pay the fee. When we put out the new pretty passport, sir, we had the new issue of passports last year. I think mine is, sorry, I was about to take my number. We put out the new issue of passports. When we did such a good job of publicizing them, sir, that people actually waited. People held back last year from renewing their passports because they didn't want to get another one, another of the old stock. They wanted the new one with the trailer in it, with the bridge in it, with all the things. If you flip it like this, you see a caricature moving, right? They wanted that one. Some people whose passport was valid for another 3 years. A person literally came to me and said, Mr. Abrams, so to get one of these new passports, I got to report this one is stolen. I said, if you want a new passport, go and apply for a new passport. Go on, this one has additional features. So I'm actually happy if more people get this one and get rid of the old one. I said, go and apply for it. We said, but Mr. Abrams, but I have one. I said, don't worry, we can cancel that in the system. But it required a change in approach of the persons who administer the system as well. We need to be honest with ourselves across the entirety of government. It is not our job to go to work every day and push papers and keep turning that mill. It is not our job to keep perpetuating inefficient systems or inefficient policies. Those who actually are in it, those in the licensing authority, those in immigration, those in customs, those in whatever, if you realize that there's a built-in inefficiency in your system, then bring it to the attention of somebody. Simply by taking that step out that might not be worth anything, you may save the government millions of dollars. If you use another one, sir, we had, in the same immigration department, we had 2 printers. One printed the bulk of the passport, then one printed a particular page. It was a biodata page or something. It printed a particular page. So you had to send it through one printer, and then a particular page was printed, laminated, and put into the passport. But there was no need for the page. But we hit a snag because that particular printer broke down. And it's only when we went to address that concern that I asked, but why do we have this page? There was a pause. I said, is this actually required by the international body? It does not exist in the American passport. And they said no. I said, so why don't we take it out? Because we have the printer. I said, but the printer not working. You know, in one, sir, in short order, that was removed. We no longer had to have that printer. We no longer had to have the 2 people who were assigned to deal with that printer there. We could put them to do something else. The government did not have to buy a printer for $300,000, and we did not have to incur the additional cost of that page in the passport. Everybody knew that it was not serving any purpose. Everybody knew it was not making any sense, but it was there. It was step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, passport at the end. If we could take out step 3, 1, 2, 4, 5, it doesn't affect the process, it doesn't affect the validity, then why are we still doing 3? And this does not, I keep using the immigration department, sir, because we went through a comprehensive exercise with that. But this applies across the board. So if you get me to the licensing authority, why is it that I must pay for a license here and then go somewhere else to get the picture taken? So I stand up in one line somewhere, then go somewhere else to do something, then take a receipt somewhere else. Why? Why do we have so many steps in our processes? Why is it that, sir, that with some aspects of the, let me not target the BRA on this one, but some things you can fill them all online, you can do it all online, but you still have to take yourself with the document you fill out online down to somewhere else to stand up in a line to wait and then go and pay. If we can fill out the forms online, why do we not just take the next step to do the payment online? We pay things online all the time. People pay their mortgage online. They pay Flow and Digicel online. They go on Amazon and do it online. Our systems have a number of built-in inefficiencies that we need to systematically identify and take out of our system. Every additional step is a waste of time. Every additional step is costing that person money. I know my good friend from Christchurch South, sir, an eminent lawyer like he is, in many instances, they charge by the hour. Accountants charge by the hour. A number of other professions charge by the hour. If people actually sit down and think about it, right? If you're in the entertainment business and you have to set up, if you charge a flat fee for something, the faster you get it done, the better it is for you. So then your time has a monetary component attached to it. People, if they think about it, can value their time. A person who's working in government, you're working in government making $2,500 a month. You know you put in 40 hours a week, by how many weeks in a month? You know for X amount of hours, I get X amount of pay. You can value your time. My time is worth $15 an hour, $30 an hour. Every time I'm standing up in a line that I don't need to be in, that is time that I could be making money or doing something else. We need to weed out these inefficiencies. So I'm actually encouraging people. We have a whole department of citizen engagement, a whole one. It is not just to take complaints, it's also to take suggestions. How can the government work to improve your life, your ease of doing business, to make things easier for you? We often can't think of it all on our own. The users in the system are the head ones who know what the issues are. The persons at the registry, the Supreme Court, they know where the issues are with the system. They know where the delays are. And sometimes, sir, if you talk to them, people complain to you, I can't believe you're doing so and so, I can't believe you're still doing X, Y, and Z. Right? But have you said anything to anybody else? We owe it to ourselves, sir, and the other persons who use our assorted systems to actually make those systems as efficient as possible. I don't believe in lines. I also believe, sir, that, the honourable member, sir, is trying her best to digitize Barbados, get all of our systems online, right? Get all of our systems online, let everything talk to everything else. Let us be as harmonious as possible. But sir, quite frankly, I do not believe that anybody should ever have to go into a government office unless it's critical that you appear in person. I think every single service, the things that are repeat things, licenses, you should not have to go and stamp in licensing authority unless your face is so changed that your picture is unrecognizable. And there's still a method, a way to upload those things, right? You should not have to turn up at the registry of the Supreme Court to get a birth certificate. You should be able to order that online. You should never have to walk into the Office of Corporate Affairs and Intellectual Property unless it is a signed document and that signature has to be done in person for some evidential reason. When we start to take persons out of the system, we start to make the system a lot more efficient. We save people's times, we reduce stress, reduce congestion, all those things. So I'm here on my soapbox. I'm here with my crusade because, sir, I absolutely hate wasting time. I'll give you one last one, sir. So there was actually a pivotal moment in my life. I had my Damascus moment. I was like Saul on his way to Damascus, sir, and the light shone.
We're in Lenten season, my friend.
We are in the Lenten season, sir.
Honourable member.
At least, sir, he did not say it was Jesus on his way to Calgary. Sir, I was at the immigration department. And this is why, sir, I tell you, I smiled. I told you at the beginning, sir, that I smiled when I became the person to actually present this piece of legislation. And I'm only here by default. I'm here because this falls properly under the Honourable Attorney General, but I'm standing in his shoes for a couple of days. So fortune has it that I was able to deliver on this one, which was one of my pet peeves. But sir, I went to the immigration department, scrambling, running from court to go to the immigration department to go back to court. And I went to collect my passport. I had applied for my passport. But then you had to wait about 3 or 4 weeks to get your passport. Right now, sir, you can get your passport. Do you know this? 3 days is standard. It can be delivered to you within 7 days through the postal service. You don't have to come in and get it. And you can get an emergency passport, sir, in less than 24 hours. This is my shameless plug for the immigration department again. But I digress, sir. So I left and I went to collect my passport. And you used to apply for the passports upstairs and collect passports downstairs. So I went downstairs. This is the building by the Wharf Road. to go in that little pokey office. And I went to the counter to collect my passport. And the lady looks at me and she says, "Good day, Mr. Abrams." I said, "Good day." I said, "Well, I've come to collect my passport." And she goes, "Okay, did you bring your ID?" I said, "What?" She goes, "Did you bring your ID?" I said, "But you just greeted me. Good day, Mr. Abrams." She said, "Sir, you need to bring your ID to collect your passport." Because they used to copy the ID and put it in the file, right? And I said, "I don't have my ID." She goes, "Sir, but you can't get the passport." But sir, you know, but I'm a lot more even-tempered now. Back then, my head used to be hot. I said to her, "You cannot be serious." She said, "Look at the sign. Proof of identification must be presented to collect passport." I said, "What sense does that make? Do you know the most secure form of identification in the world?" She said, "What?" I said, "A passport." I said, "The most secure form of identification in the world is a passport." I said, "Just go in the drawer, look for the one with my name, and open it." She said, "Sir, but the ID does not belong to you until you collect it." I said, "So if I came back in here tomorrow with that passport in the drawer, you would accept as my ID?" She goes, "Yes, sir." I said, "Please call the chief immigration officer." She said, I said, "Call the chief immigration officer." Call the chief immigration officer. And she was saying, "But sir, somebody is here and they don't have ID to collect the passport." I said, "Not somebody, you knew my name." So then I could hear, God bless him, I'm calling this in a positive light, Mr. Graves. I said, "So Miss," she passed the phone to me, obviously he asked for me. And I explained I was there to collect my passport. I did not have my ID, right? And I told the lady to open the passport and she wouldn't do it. So I heard him tell her in no uncertain terms to give the man his passport and start wasting his time. That sign has now disappeared. But my point is, it took that for us to remove an impediment and a hiccup that was wasting people's time and quite frankly ran completely counter to common sense. There are a lot more of those that exist in our business landscape and our legal landscape. And until people call them out in many instances, they're not going to be changed. Our Law Reform Commission is looking as much as it can, sir, in identifying the things that are obsolete and making them, and changing the law to make more sense, to keep contemporary, to keep relevant. If I close on this one, sir, one of my other peeves is with bank accounts, right? We have a lot of red tape, quite frankly, in our banking system. As a lawyer, I had what we used to do, sir, to avoid getting yourself in trouble. If you're doing a transaction for somebody, quite often you open an account in your name and that person's name. So you may end up with 15 accounts because you're doing things at that time, but when you finish with the estate, for example, you pay everything, you close off that account. But you keep yourself out of trouble by having Wilfred Abrams / estate of, so that all money went in there and you can easily track it. I went into a reputable financial institution in Barbados, for which I was at the time the holder. I think at that time it was 11 accounts. And I went to open another account. And the person asked me for my 2 forms of ID. Now, understand, sir, I transacted business with the teller. Having completed that business, I then said, okay, so now I want to open an account. The person who I had just transacted business with under the name Wilfred Abrams, who gave me funds from Wilfred Abrams' account, required proof that I was Wilfred Abrams to open another account. And I said to the person, I do not have all that documentation here. This is the only bank I am with. I have 11 accounts with you. Can you not just go to the file of one of the other ones and whoever the last one was, and photocopy the documents? It's there. No, sorry, you have to produce these things every single time you come to open an account in Barbados. That still exists as we speak. As we speak now.
I'm very familiar, Honourable Member, with it. Very.
As we speak now, that system still exists and is in nonsense. I understand, sir, situations of know your client. I understand situations of, you know what, let's keep the record straight. But is it that you want me to physically pass you something and there's some magic in that? Or is it that you require the documentation? Because unless I frauded you for all 11, at which point I could fraud you for the 12th, then you should be able to take that information and make it easy for me to do it with the next one if nothing has changed. We need to get to that point, sir, when it's not simply checking boxes. We understand what it is that we're asking for, why we're asking for it, and once it is satisfied, then you do not put people through unnecessary stress. How do we get the information? It's as simple as that. I keep saying, sir, the last one, this is the definite last one, sir. In relation to forms, I'm just pitching things out there. What people don't realize is that I can write a letter. A check is a monetary instrument. In snapshot form says, pay this amount to X person. But equally, I can write a letter to the honorable member for, say, Michael East. I could write a letter, say, please pay the sum of $5,000 to the honorable member for Christchurch East, and sign it and date it. Once all the information is there, that can act as a monetary instrument. So sometimes we ask people to fill out forms when the purpose is not the form, it is the information on the form. So these are things, sir, we need to look at across the board. I'm throwing some ideas out there to whoever's listening because we're talking about something that's effectively being done to increase business efficacy and make things simpler. Persons who are responsible for seeing processes through or receiving processes or granting applications need to actually understand the purpose for which they're actually doing it and must be in a position to critically look at what they're doing to see if the mischief is satisfied, if all the information is provided, right? If what you're asking for is already in 2 other documents, and be able to make those calls. And where they see that it doesn't work, then recommend it to somebody else because you may make life simple for somebody, or you may end up in the government doing exactly what it's doing right now, which is amending legislation or passing new legislation to make your life easier. But we can only often do it, sir, with your own input, your own cooperation, and bringing it to the attention of the government. So, having spoken thusly in relation to the Notaries Public Bill 2024, I do beg, sir, that it be read a second time. Thank you.
Honourable for Christchurch. So,
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. This is going to be very, very brief. Since the Honourable Member for St. Michael East, Christchurch East, and I spoke in Christchurch East.
Correct.
Yes. He and I spoke in consensus prior to the sit-in as to the purpose of the legislation. So there's no dispute on this side, except that while he was speaking, I was reading the bill, and I came to section 4 of that bill. I'll give the particulars in a minute, but just to say that linguistic correctness is as important as legal validity, since the law cannot be expressed unless it expresses itself in language, and that language must be correct. The Honourable Member may be aware that, or he may remember, I think it was the case Diplock, in a famous trust case in which the decision was influenced by the location of a punctuation mark so that the law expresses itself in language, and the meaning of the law is never settled unless the language is precise, unless the language is settled. Or most eminent philosopher, Professor George Lamin, said that language is the most sacred of all human creations. And if it is so sacred, we as lawyers, we as lawmakers are under an obligation to ensure that it is always correct. And if the plot is to have any meaning, we must be precise in the language that we use. So I want to bring the honourable member to section 4 of the Act. As I've said, and I repeat, the language must be precise, and its meaning, or its expression, I beg your pardon, ultimately influences meaning. And this is not trivial pursuit. I would invite the honourable member to look at page 8, E of that page, proof of admission to practice law in Barbados. And this is not trivial. I take it that's a verb, and if it is a verb, we are in the English tradition, and that must be practiced with an S and not a C. I take you back, Your Honour, I take the member back to I think it's the case Diplock, the famous trust case, in which the location of a punctuation mark influenced the decision. In fact, that decision related to hundreds of thousands of pounds sterling. I think the case was Diplock. It's a famous trust case. But since we live in the English tradition and not the American, and since this purports to be a verb, I would invite the honourable member to just make that change so that the law is certain, the law is precise, and that in the future there will be no dispute as to what subsection, or rather paragraph E, intends to say. If it is to practice law, it's a verb. To the practice of law would be a noun, but to practice, that's a verb, and therefore, as in Diplock, one would want to make that correction. So that is my only contribution. While the honourable member was speaking, I was hoping he would speak for a long time. I was trying to read the rest of the legislation, but what I've read thus far is linguistically correct. That is the only error that occurs. So I would ask the honourable member to ensure that whoever is responsible for the final draft, that they should make that change. So that's my only contribution to the legislation. I'm obliged to you, sir.
If I may, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Honourable member for James Sampson.
I'm obliged, Mr. Speaker. I feel constrained to say a few words on this matter now before us. And I perhaps would want to cast my comments, sir, my perspectives in a slightly different light to that which has been already laid before your Honour's House. And you will forgive me, sir, if I speak as one should if one carries the overarching responsibility for the country's productive sector. Mr. Speaker, the matter which comes to my mind on this issue is one of facilitating growth in Barbados. I think it would be correct to say, sir, that the Honourable Prime Minister would have indicated during the budget speech a couple of weeks ago that we have had a traditional pattern when this country has seen growth and recorded growth of growing at, on average, 2 to 3% every year. That obviously has not always been the case because there have been harsh times when, under a different administration, such growth as we may have recorded is not visible by the naked eye and cannot really be quantified, if it existed at all. And equally, under a previous administration, sir, we would have had negative growth, which would take us into negative integers so that the economy shrunk rather than grow larger. And those are considerations, sir, which perhaps, though not necessarily germane to this bill, have to be borne in mind. What we want to do, sir, as a government, and I think what we were implored to do as a country by the Prime Minister when she spoke, was to lift our gaze to the possibility, sir, of new horizons, where we would be seeking to secure growth at a rate of 4 to 5% per year. Now, sir, how is that done? Because what one has to remember is that virtually every form of expansion of commerce in this country enables us to come to a point where we can move that which we do domestically to a position where that which we do is done across borders, thereby earning ourselves foreign exchange, sir, thereby expanding our economic activity further and spurring even further investment, Mr. Speaker, sir, further employment, and obviously, sir, with all of that comes the growth that you're talking about. Now, sir, the reality is that there are sometimes small things that act as inhibitors. And my learned friend who led this debate, who piloted this bill, and may I congratulate him from this place, sir, because I think he piloted it well. Many people at first blush would not have thought as expansively on this matter as the honourable member did. Mr. Speaker, sir, I think that it is important to recognize that there are little things sometimes which are very consequential. And he's right when he says that at first instance you would not think so to cast such a wide net on a piece of legislation, which again seems almost innocuous and not just harmless, but almost ineffective. But sir, we are talking about something that really seeks to transform the way in which we do business in Barbados. And that is what captured my attention about it. The role of the notary public in the international context, sir, is going to be an individual, or is an individual, who is going to affirm international documentation or international transactions, and it is going to be documentation for use abroad. The honourable gentleman is quite right, sir, when he made the point that overseas almost every lawyer is a notary public. In fact, let me begin, rather than saying this later on, let me say it up front now. It is a fact, sir, that part of business facilitation in places like the United States of America, part of business facilitation certainly in Canada, part of business facilitation across Latin America, Mr. Speaker, is the idea of having, as part of the internal operation of the business place, the notary public in situ. And that is simply mean physically present on the compound. So there's somebody in that office, Mr. Speaker, sir, who is able then, in the event that you are trying to get yourself involved in a certain type of purchase or a certain type of transaction, that individual is there so as to ensure that you do not get turned away, but rather are able to conclude the transaction. And why? Because history has taught us all around the world that in this very dynamic thing called commerce, if a man has to, as we would put it, stoops him out and say, well, can't I get this here, do? No, I ain't gonna come back another time. Very, very often he does not come back, and that another time don't come. And you want to capture that dollar when the opportunity arises. We have tended, sir, to be very elitist. And I think that the honourable member diplomatically indicated that, we've obviously borrowed our system from the British, and we've done an excellent job throughout time of aping and imitating the English to the point where sometimes we are more English than the real English. And so this justice of the peace thing is treated, sir, as though it is manna from heaven. And a person of high standing politically bestows on you the title of justice of the peace, and you're entitled to hold your head high in the community and lift your chest up because you have been given the opportunity, sir, to affix your signatures to some documents and make life easier for people in your community. But, Mr. Speaker, the truth of the matter is that when we strip away all of that facade from it, and there's that element of it, I don't take that away from it. What we really should be thinking about now, that was good in 1966 and 1976 perhaps. But what we need to be thinking about now as we approach 2026 is how do we make the pulse of commerce in this country? How do we enable each and everybody? This term uses the small man, but if you look out through the window of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, you will see several men. Physically, they're all looking roughly the same, but they may be engaged in different forms of activity. Whether we see it as large money or small money, that is perhaps where the large man and small man concept comes from. But the dollar earned is what we have to be dealing with. And striving to make sure that it is easier for everybody, irrespective of what you do financially, to be able to get access to that honest dollar for an honest day's work. And that, therefore, sir, means that there has to be a great leveler, a democratizing wave across this country. And in part, the inhibition to achieve that comes when you have this bureaucratic step. And is identified as the honourable member who piloted the legislation quite rightly said. In some things, you need to have a notary public. If the notary public is the registrar of the court, and the person who needs the notary, sir, is the coconut vendor, you practice law in this country for many decades, as have I, as has the honourable, as have all of us who have spoken in this house, sir, thus far on this matter. We all know, Mr. Speaker, sir, you ain't accessing the deputy registrar of the court in any hurry, especially if you come from a certain lower echelon of this country. And those are the facts, sir, that we have to stare in the eye, and we have to fix it. Now, an enfeebled attempt was made in the last administration, tinkering, yes, in 2017. And again, the honourable gentleman is right. People came in here, sir, perfumed or cologned. One or two would have put on powder, their Sunday best, to come and add 2 or 3 people to the categories. When we knew, all should have known, because reasonably it was foreseeable, that you would have to make this, as I say, a great leveler is needed. That you make people notary public so as to facilitate business in Barbados. Well, it isn't a difficult concept, because, Mr. Speaker, sir, if it is that if you had, and I'm trying to see if you can find it there for me, Wilfred, the range of people that we were talking about, is it in this one? The range of people that you were talking about was so narrow and so circumscribed, sir, that you were talking about people who, most of whom would have been in government positions, first of all, so each and everybody can access them. And who were they? The Deputy Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Home Affairs. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, again I say this. If there's an estate matter involving, sir, a gentleman from your constituency who happens to be engaged in the debushing program, is he likely to be able even to begin to find the high offices of the Deputy Permanent Secretary in that ministry?
I remember you think you know what it is, though?
I'm not going to suggest ignorance on the part of anybody, Mr. Speaker, sir. But we make these things, the point I'm making is we make these things too difficult. Too difficult. And you have then, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I said, the registrar of the court and the supervisor of insolvency. Mr. Speaker, sir, I do not know how many people in Barbados even begin to understand what it is that the supervisor of insolvency does. The registrar of companies, or where to find him, Mr. Speaker, sir, and all of the different permanent secretaries, whether they be in home affairs or foreign affairs, international business. Well, in fact, I can tell you frankly, sir, that if you're talking about the ones in some of these places, sir, they may be on travel duty for the government of Barbados, so they're out of the country more often than in. How are they going to be contacted anyhow? But this was the nonsense. This was the nonsense that passed for business facilitation in Barbados. And at some time, a sensible government has to come into this place. Happily, one has arrived. In order, sir, to remove this fig leaf and expose the naked emptiness of what is taking place in terms of commercial activity and facilitation of commercial activity in Barbados. Since 2012, the mantra in this country has been business facilitation. Since 2012. Administration followed by other administration. And sir, where have we gotten with it? And so therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, as I said to you, it is easier perhaps if we see and try to look at what takes place in some parts of the world where this issue of notarization has been treated with a leveling approach. And I say to you, that go to the States, you will find, sir, that you are going to find that the internal operations of the business is about efficiency, it is about certainty, it is about facilitating business, sir, and therefore you're going to have the notarizing officer physically present in the building. It might be one of the people who are working in the account section or something like that. Mr. Speaker, it is also true to say that one of the issues that we have to deal with, sir, is recognizing what this is all about. I began by talking about the growth of this country's economy, and it is to that I want to be faithful and revert. You cannot, Mr. Speaker, sir, lift the gaze of this country to be talking about growth at 4% if you do not, as part of your effort, remove these little impediments to progress. And sir, you're wanting to have people make investments. There is today, if I recall correctly, when we became government, we were looking at about $8 billion in savings in the banking system, banking sector in Barbados. There is today, sir, double-digit billions of dollars sitting. I don't mean 10, I'm talking now, we're up in 12 or going towards 14. The exact figures are eluding me, but somewhere between 12 and 14. Sitting in the banking sector, liquidity, excess liquidity in this country. And what we want to do is to get people who are holding on to money, however large or however small, to invest it, Mr. Speaker, sir. And let us not fool ourselves. Just as a Trinidadian or a Jamaican and now a Guyanese is easily sitting down in their country and investing across borders, we need more Barbadians to be lifting their gaze to move that money that they're sitting down on in a bank account and invest across borders and also in Barbados as well. Were we any different to them? Our psyche might be different. Our level of ambition might be different, but we're not constructed any differently. And Mr. Speaker, therefore, sir, what we got to be able to do is to ensure that there is a synergy between business practices here and business practices elsewhere. And that things that people take for granted elsewhere, such as the notarization of essential documents, are things that can be easily done equally here. Financial transactions, mortgages, the leasing or purchasing, sir, of real estate. Documents, Mr. Speaker, sir, that need to be notarized, therefore, because you're trying to conclude a lease or trying to conclude a sale. And there's a duty to satisfy if it is a Barbadian doing this overseas, sir. But somebody needs to know that he is who he says he is, and that the banking documentation that he's presenting is what it actually is authentically. It has to be authenticated, Mr. Speaker, sir. There's a need for us, therefore, to satisfy the proposed seller, if our Barbadian is the person who's doing the buying, the title agent, Mr. Speaker, sir, the real estate agent, and on and on and on. And to facilitate that business, therefore, we have to come out of this dark age thing where there are only 4 or 5 entities, or then you expand it the other day to 10 or so entities in Barbados who are able to notarize. And what the beauty of this legislation is saying, sir, is that a person who wishes to be appointed as a notary public shall now submit an application in writing to the registrar and inform self in the second schedule. And the application, sir, is accompanied by a certain set of documents. But you are really opening now the gates for people in the business community people who are academics, people who are right-thinking, logically minded citizens of Barbados who may be neither in the business community nor academics, but understand what it takes to make a society and economy work better, to say, look, I too could play a role in this. Because essentially this is what it is. And if you thought it through, Mr. Speaker, sir, and quite frankly, if successive administrations in this country, many of whom we have hailed as heroes, we have hailed them, sir, as great men, visionaries, exemplars, all sorts of wonderful things are said. But all of us know that in every village in Barbados, in every village that you see in St. Michael, in every village that exists in St. James, in every village in Christchurch, Mr. Speaker, sir, all around this country, we know that there are people who's be struggling to get access even to a JP sometimes, far less than Notary Public, because it is urgent that I need to get something signed. Let me tell you, somebody come in my constituency office, boss, you use a JP, you can sign a document for me. No, I'm not a JP, but I'm an attorney at law. Let me hear what is that you want signed. Because very often we could do this, the exchange because you're an attorney. But frankly speaking, if you were a notary, if you were supposed to be a notary public that got to sign it, the attorney at law was not enabled to do that. So the leveling effect of this document, sir, this bill, is what I wanted to capture our attention, focus our attention on. Because essentially you are, by using the People's Parliament now to democratize an essential process, you are opening floodgates, sir, for facilitating business. But is that not what we came here for? No, I ain't in trouble, my friend, and talk about replacing the S with a C and vice versa, because that too has its place. That too has its place. But I think the people of Barbados want to hear more about how they are being empowered, how their lives are being propelled into a different category of opportunity existing for them by the pieces of legislation that come here. I suspect, sir, that lurks in the hearts and minds of men when they listen to a radio or when they listen at night with nothing better to do in the evening or a long weekend like this. Let me hear what they went to Parliament for Thursday, because normally they go Tuesday. I presume it is something important. I want to wager, Mr. Speaker, if I was a wagering man, I would wager that it would be more than hearing a C should be a S or S should be a C, but rather, sir, that this legislation has an empowering impulse that could lead to a dollar being accessed by me more easily. And that if I could put a dollar in my pocket by virtue of there being now an opportunity for more notaries public, and I understand now what a notary public is and what he's supposed to do, I ask myself the question, if I were one of the people out there who did not know but was listening in, why did they not do this before? And I would be inclined to say, well, look, thank God that the God thing named the Barbados Labour Party. And thank God they got a cabinet, like the cabinet of this Barbados Labour Party, that can be heard, seen, and felt doing things to help people in Barbados get through a little better. But if one is more limited in perspective, then a C and an S become very important, and so on and so forth, and no one would detract from that. But it is a replica of that which the Dems came here and did in 2017 or 16. And the Dems will be the Dems, and the Dems are still the Dems, and the thinking of the Dems remains the same. And that is the other message that has come out of this today, sir. That the Dems will be the Dems, and the Dems are still the Dems, and the thinking of the Dems has remained the same. You want me to say it again? No, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also go further. I want to say to you, sir, that a lot of what our people are doing is modernizing Barbados. You all remember who sits across from me from St. Michael North? Would have done a lot of good work, sir, when he was Minister of Industry. And industrialization of this country, sir, is once again expanding. And there are a lot of people, sir, who are seeing aspects of manufacturing and a vision for that sector growing. And I want to say, sir, that, none of the equipment that we're using is bought here. Most of it has to be imported and sourced outside. And a lot of our folks, sir, find themselves in Canada and the United States and even in Latin America doing these types of transactions. I am told, sir, that in 2019, just before COVID, purchases of light industrial equipment would have been a $1.5 or $1.6 trillion business. So that was the area where our people were involved. But again, sir, if I go up there and I can't buy, I gotta find somewhere to put I ain't got cash in hand, I gotta find somewhere to put a long-term arrangement in place. I gotta be backed by financial people who need to know that I am who I say I am. They need the documentation to establish, verify, validate, authenticate that the business I say I do is the business that I actually do. And that, again, in this very small way, the notary public becomes a major player, a major facilitator, Mr. Speaker, sir. And, and sometimes it is important to look at all these little tiers of our economy and see how a piece of legislation like this fits in and makes it possible for people to climb the rungs of the ladder of progress. And if they don't have the access, sir, to these things like what we're doing here today, the ladder of progress becomes really an impediment. I can't get in the way. And born out of that impediment is frustration. And out of frustration then becomes vexation with the system, with the way of life in this country. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is important, therefore, that in the area of procuring industrial equipment, in the area, sir, of that which we say we do among the best in the world, provide financial services, there's no longer an international business sector, sir. We see business now domestically being international. We want to internationalize every business here in Barbados. And we want business overseas to be here, registered here as Barbadian business. And we structured our tax arrangements in such a way as to incentivize that. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, whether you're into banking, insurances, whatever aspect of financial services, sir, behind all of that there comes a point in time where you need to have the role of the notary public played. And even at that lofty, highbrow level, where a foreign company is coming here and talking about $20 million offshore to Barbados, sir, $30 million offshore to Barbados. You know that even those people prior to this legislation that we are trying to deal with today, even at that level, those people, sir, who need to have notaries, sir, were forced to call upon the Deputy Permanent Secretary in the office of the Honourable Member, the Deputy Permanent Secretary in my ministry, who may be with me in Ghana doing the business of the government, or in Panama doing the business of the government, Mr. Speaker, sir. Huh? And the supervisor of insolvency, a narrow category of people. And you're talking about people, sir, who've come here or are coming here, or we want more of them to bring large investment of that multiple million-dollar nature. And they are asked to take us seriously. When if you enumerate the people who hold these offices, sir, you can call, will fit on both hands, the fingers of both hands. A whole country looking to see growth, looking to see development, sir. But between the hours of 8:30 a.m. and 4:30 p.m., you're able to access 10 people who are fundamental. And of those 10, 5 of them hold offices, sir, which will take them abroad frequently. Now, can we be serious about it? Can we be serious? And it is one approach to public administration, sir, that I think this country must now begin to become not just curious about. But I want to suggest, sir, that Barbadians must now start to become critical about these things. Why is it that it takes a Labour Party administration to sit down and look at these things with a critical and objective eye? Pick it apart, deconstruct and reconstruct in the language of the Honourable Prime Minister. And say, look, these are some of the things we've got to fix, though, if we're going to get it right. Now, I do not know, sir. There's another side. In fact, there are other sides because there are several parties that pop up during election time, several loose organizations that come up during election time. And as quick as the election is over, they seem to disappear from the landscape. Then they pop up again and equally disappear. But dialogue such as this that I'm having with you, Mr. Speaker, sir, does not ever seem to take place. But these are concrete issues that we knew all along existed. And they're concrete issues, sir, that we have to fix. I do not know how you can offer an excuse to the CEO of a company which has decided that it is going to invest multiple millions of dollars in Barbados, sir, and tell them, well, boy, I know, we use the example of the honourable member who was attorney for one of them. Want to close a transaction at $4 million worth. And it is urgent that we get this transaction closed by 4:30 Friday evening. Well, skipper, you know, but here they only got 10 men that could do that day. Because you need a man to sign, and you only got 8 or 9 of them. And I can't find a body. So the $4 million we're going to put on pause until Monday. What do you think would happen, Mr. Speaker, sir, in the boardroom? What do you think will happen with the shareholders of the company? Do you really feel that they owe Barbados a living? Or they think they owe Barbados a living? It is for us to get our house in order and to get it right. And that's where we have been failing, sir, for donkey years. And it is important, sir, that we do not fail to recognize that every step in the process of rectification, every step along this journey of transformation, some are going to be big-ticket items, some are going to be smaller items, but, Mr. Speaker, sir, every one of them is fundamental to the process. And, Mr. Speaker, may I equally say that of equal importance is the question of making sure that I don't have to be butting about from pillar to post looking for a too few. Because if I had 10 odd people doing a fundamental task as we did, and as we now do still, of notary public services, sir, if I can't find one over by St. George North somewhere, and I can't find the other in Christchurch, sir, what am I doing? I am racing across the country with all sorts of other things, impediments, traffic, children leaving school, etc., etc. Time is money in anybody's world, whether your business is large or your business is small. The small man will tell you, sir, that they've got to hustle, ain't got time. The large man will tell you, sir, I don't have the time with that. Time is money. So we've wasted people's time, we've wasted people's money, we've invested in years of inefficiency, create a lot of doubt and uncertainty about how serious we are as an investment jurisdiction, Mr. Speaker, sir. All at the same time, we're telling people that we're serious about business facilitation. But that can't make sense. That can't make sense. And I fear that the problem is compounded if the voice of that which was a mighty political institution in Barbados, if the voice of a political institution that at one time had a vision of regionalism and national identity and national independence, if that voice is reduced to a C and an S and nothing else. Well, Mr. Speaker, sir, I think we also have to look at what can happen. Now, the legislation, to the naked eye, does not
The
speak.
member has 2 more minutes.
Only 2 minutes, sir?
Yes, please.
Well, I was now ready to go to town.
Understood, Honourable Member.
But anyhow, quickly, the legislation, the legislation, sir, only does not on its face take us into the future. And I really want to hope that the interpretation of it will allow for online usage of the notarization power, the usage of the e-signatures and so on is recognized in law in Barbados. But that it is silent, those things are silent, treated in silence in the bill. And I want, sir, to say that for me, the use of the online technology is important because, again, speed, efficiency. Also, sir, error reduction, because you're removing, to some extent, a lot of the human involvement. And then, sir, of course, cost reduction. Those are some of the things, sir, that time will not allow, obviously, now to go into them expansively, but it is not something that is directly spoken to in the legislation. I'm hoping that when we read this in conjunction with other pieces of legislation in Barbados, that it will take us to that point. Because I do know that in other parts of the world, and you know, this is really, it was this week that the Foreign Minister of Panama spent a couple of days here, sir, with me and Prime Minister and a few other people, dealing with business that we got to do in Panama. And sir, we are about to open the Mexicans are about to open an embassy here. The Panamanians are about to, she was here because they intend to open an embassy here very shortly. They've now got an ambassador, a designated ambassador for Barbados, sir. The Colombians, likewise. The world is reaching out to us, looking to open embassies and have their ambassadors here. And we will therefore, sir, be doing more business with Latin America where the notary public concept is alive and well. And equally, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we deepen our relationship with the United States commercially, and not just now in terms of visits and tourism, but now commercially selling things to the US and so on, not just buying from them neither, because we got to flesh out our economy in that way. That is what the Honourable Member of St. Michael's South Central now spends day and night reasoning and working on how we penetrate the US market to earn foreign exchange. And likewise with Canada. All of these are places, sir, where the notary public, sir, the concept is alive and well. Ease of access to them is important, sir. Being able to relate between them and the people who have to employ them, sir, or utilize their services electronically is important. It is a brand new way of doing business. It's a brave new world. And we got to be part of that, sir. And it is for those reasons, Mr. Speaker, sir, being respectful of time, that I want to fully support and associate myself with this particular piece of legislation and wish it well as it progresses through the passage of the 2 houses of assembly of this country. I'm obliged to you, sir.
Honourable Member of St. Michael South Central.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to lend just a few words to this debate, especially based on the last 2, well, not the last 2, should I say the last 2 substantive contributions, the members on this side, but in particular, the member who piloted the bill, in so much as he said in his presentation, if anyone is listening, and then he made some recommendations for the work that needs to be done. I hope that he knows that the member who has responsibility for technology and innovation is definitely listening. I dare say that is why I am here. But I also want to build on the platform that was built so capably by the member who just spoke with respect to the future of these kinds of transactions. And the member made an invocation to us to think ahead, to understand what is needed now. Really what is needed now is not so far in the future, it is here. And the fact is that right now, Barbados, like most jurisdictions of our kind, We've become quite good, quite expert in producing and validating the authenticity of documents in a physical environment. And so embossing of letters, printing of certificates on the most delicate of parchment paper, security laminates on cards, stamps, wet signatures from authorized personnel. These are the kinds of things that we've used to give administrators the means to determine the authenticity of documents. The challenge is that in an online environment, these physical characteristics are lost. So when you scan a document, you cannot perceive or transmit a seal or any of the other means of authenticity or authentication that would apply to a physical paper environment. And so when you have to do that, when you have to scan to send something abroad, when you have to scan something to send it even to your neighbor, to send it to a client of the licensing authority or the transport authority or any service that we provide to the government, to the people of Barbados, then the whole capacity for authentication goes away. It brings us then to something that the Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology is working quite swiftly on and towards, along with key partners like the Immigration Department and the Central Bank of Barbados. The thing is that this business of moving to an online environment, making services available online for people so that either in this jurisdiction or others, they can do business more easily, more quickly, and at a lower cost. It is not just a government matter. And in fact, we saw that with the introduction of the Easy Pay platform and other payment services, really where government cannot do it alone. And we have to work with other institutions, in particular financial institutions, in order to make this happen. And so similarly, we have the question of what we know as public key infrastructure. And the young people who work with me on these matters refer to it very briefly as PKI. That's what I hear in the halls of my ministry every day these days, public key infrastructure or PKI capacity. And all it is saying really is that this is the way that we are able to validate digital documents. And PKI, public key infrastructure, is a framework that we use to secure electronic communications and transactions over the internet using a pair of cryptographic keys. One key is a public key, and the other key is a private key. Now, what we're able to do with this is to make it so that a digital signature that is affixed to a digital document can be authenticated. So it provides a secure environment for the signature of electronic documents and messages, and it ensures the integrity and authenticity of the signed content. Now, I don't want to go into all of the technical requirements of what this means, but if we want to look very closely for an example of that, we know that the public key infrastructure and the digital signature mechanism are currently used, for example, in the e-passport system. The e-passport system already makes use of that methodology, of that system of authentication. The Trident ID also has that capacity to digitally validate the authenticity of presented identities and of digital signatures in a digital environment. But we have to go further. We really have to be able to create, and that's what MIST is working towards now, but we can't do it alone. We're doing it along with the other users of this very important capability. The current legislative framework allows for the legal recognition of electronic signatures through what we know as the Electronic Transactions Act, and that's important. So we'll note that the legislation that comes to this honorable place now always allows for whatever we are validating or presenting, where signatures or publication are required. Legislation now also allows for that in a digital environment, which is good. But while the legal recognition of electronic signatures that is enabled through the Electronic Transactions Act is an important step, it isn't enough. We need to have an environment where there is more legal certainty about the mechanisms by which electronic signatures are generated, accepted, and regulated. In other words, you need to know for sure that if you receive an electronic signature from the Immigration Department, that can be trusted. It cannot be generated anywhere else. It has a singular provenance. It comes from one place. And so the public key infrastructure is what allows us to do that. Now, currently, the existing PKI regime is governed by ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Authority standards. It is also governed by our Barbados Identity Management Act and by Barbados' Electronic Transactions Act. And that is the only way in which we've been able to have the e-passport and the Trident ID card. So what do we have to do now? What we need is to embrace this approach, this methodology, this digital authentication process. We need to embrace this all over the country, in a whole of country manner. Because it has to be that if we are moving fully to online transactions, that anyone who must receive, so whether it is a financial institution, whether it is the registry, whether it is the state hospital, anyone that receives a document from an individual must be able to trust its origin, must be able to trust that it could not have been forged because of the dual public key cryptographic approach. So this is technology that must be proven to be infallible. And so we need to make sure that we adopt it in a whole of country manner to allow for its recognition, and for all of what we call the derived artifacts, any asset that is produced from this technology, to allow for it to be used in all sectors of the country at all times in a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week environment. So what we will soon be seeing is a move towards having the appropriate legislative framework in order to build out that system, in order to build out an entire digital trust services regime for Barbados. And when I say digital trust services, all I really am talking about is the full range of solutions and mechanisms that are designed to ensure the security, privacy, and reliability of digital transactions and interactions. Now, sir, I pause here for a moment to acknowledge that if we want, and when I say we, I mean all of us as Barbadians, as a country, as a society, as an economic jurisdiction, as a place that must be concerned with creating opportunities for all people to thrive, to realize the full range of their choices, to be able to operate in the fullness of whoever they want to be. If we say that we want that, then we also have to create the systems that make it safe to do that in every environment. And so the questions of law and order and the things that protect people are not just applicable when you're walking down Swan Street or when you're in Dover or when you're in any other part of Barbados. Increasingly, questions of security and safety in conducting business are going to apply in an online environment. I say all that to say that whether it is the electronic transactions legislation or the data protection legislation or the cybercrime legislation or move towards this secure environment for digital signing, These are the ways in which Barbadians are going to be protected so that they can act with certainty when conducting business in this digital environment. Sir, as we move to modernize the way that we do things, and really to join the rest of the world in the way that we do things, because when we're talking about exports, when we're talking about integration into global markets, we cannot integrate into global markets that are digitally led while we operate in an analog environment. You know, when I go to Costa Rica or to Panama or to Argentina, I almost said Argentina, because I was about to make the point that I have to speak the language. I have to be able to relate to the environment in which they relate. Similarly, if we are talking about giving people opportunities to earn from right here where they may sit, then we have to make sure that we also provide the tools for people to function in that online environment. But more than that, even setting aside the need to create online opportunities for young people, and more we're talking about issues that relate to allowing people to be able to monetize their online content, and what are the global conversations we have to have about that? Because we do. We have to make sure that we are talking to the owners of large online marketplaces like Google and Amazon and others to say, look, we also have creators and entrepreneurs in this part of the world who have a right to be able to access these markets. And how are we going to make that happen? And how are we going to liberalize the same rules that they always want the global south to liberalize? How are you in the global north, how are you in developed countries going to liberalize your financial rules so that we or content creators and business people can have access? That is one of the conversations we have to have at the international level. But right here, one of the things we have to do is to get to a stage of maturity in the technological environment where digital trust services, this public key infrastructure that means that we can make sure that digital signatures are real and valid and can be trusted, we have to get to that stage of maturity. We have to do a lot of groundwork. And so we at MIST are about to have some conversations in the coming days with colleagues at the central bank, with colleagues at the immigration department, all of the current environments for which this is now critical, with a view to determining what should this infrastructure look like, how will we roll it out, so that the member for Christchurch East need not shout into the void to wonder if anyone is listening about the question of needing to migrate services such as this to an online environment, but so that he can be assured that this is, in fact, the direction in which we are already moving, and the kind of work that will give even more, that will cause this legislation that he has introduced to have even more impact, to be even more far-reaching, and to then reach another level of modernization for the residents of Barbados and friends of Barbados and people who want to invest and people who see Barbados as a worthwhile jurisdiction in which to do business. So, sir, I rose to give this update through you to the people of Barbados in terms of how are we building trust in the digital environment such that we can expand its capacity and in that way the choices of the people we humbly serve. And with those few words, sir, I'm obliged to you.
Honourable Member for Christchurch East.
Sir, with such an entirely comprehensive supporting cast. In this one, sir, there's almost nothing left for me to say, but allow me just simply to say, sir, in everything we do, we debated the law reform, the amendments to the Law Reform Commission's legislation recently. And the point was made there that we have hundreds of acts of parliament, some that were passed for a particular reason, some that are of general application, some that people collide with often. Most people know the road traffic regulation because if you drive, you need to know it, right? So people know the Companies Act because, quite frankly, if you operate a business in Barbados and you're registered, you need to know what the Companies Act. Some people will know, sir, about the sexual offences legislation because, it comes in the paper. But there are other obscure pieces of legislation that may have a practical application to the most select group among us, right? They have to be there because everything has to be accommodated for in the law. But unless you have the opportunity or the circumstance to collide with that piece of legislation, you might not even know it's there. So this is why I ask persons, this is perhaps the most consultative government that Barbados has ever had. We go to consultation on most things. The select committee, sir, the House committee, went to consultation most recently on the child justice legislation and child protection legislation. The widest possible consultation. Even before we embark upon pieces of legislation, we consult before in a way that has never been done. And what that says is that we want our legislative agenda to reflect the reality of Barbados as it is now and Barbados into the future. We want all views and all opinions to be able to contend in this space. And while, sir, we will invite consultation on the things that we are progressing going along, I once again repeat my plea. Those persons who are in a space where they use certain aspects of the law or they deal with government processes, whether by applications, whether by licenses, whether by whatever. If you come into the organs, you come into contact with the organs of government and the organs of government are not working for you, then please reach out and tell us what your concerns are, where the inefficiencies are. Some are obvious, and we are working on a lot of those. Some, quite frankly, we will not know unless we as individuals come into collision with it or somebody else brings it to our attention. So, and in some instances, it may be the most minor of offenses that might yield significant benefits for a group of persons. So I'm encouraging persons, please use the Office of Citizenship Engagement within the Office of the Prime Minister to reach out and to advise of the things that you think are inefficient, the hiccups in the system, where you think we can do better. If you think people are being disadvantaged by a certain piece of legislation, reach out to your parliamentary representatives. Reach out to the ministers that you see on the street. Quite often, sir, people will flag me down or see me somewhere, stop and want to engage me, right, about something that is a bee in their bonnet. And I smile sometimes because the bee in their bonnet might be the same bee I have in my bonnet. And quite frankly, a number of the things that I have actually pushed for are things that personally annoyed me, not necessarily because it disadvantaged me, but because they quite frankly made no sense. And in many instances, people think there's a reason for everything that's there. And if the law says X, Y, and Z, then it has to be X, Y, and Z. They don't think that it might have been X, Y, and Z back in 1900, but that X, Y, and Z makes no sense now. So I'm asking people to reach out and let us know, give us your feedback. Give us the feedback on the things that are bothering you in terms of the existing legislation. If you believe that something needs to be contemplated in the future or we need to be more forward-thinking in something, please give us your feedback and we can try to accommodate it. This is why I welcome, sir, the consultation for, as the Prime Minister said, for significant legislation that has public or social import, that we go to consultation on it. But please, if there's something that you see that you want, you believe can be done better, reach out and let us know, and we will hear it on your behalf. So, sir, we actually had a very interesting debate, and I thank the Honourable Member who just spoke. She doesn't disappoint. I had to call her out just now, sir. But she I am glad that she spoke, because she took us not just from where we are, and not just in what we're trying to address, but to where we could be and the other things that need to be dealt with. And the pace at which things are changing, it is so rapid now that even if we make an amendment for now, that amendment may be obsolete in a year or 2 years. So as much as we can, we need to be forward thinking and project into the future to take account for things so we're not caught behind, so we're not always lagging. But we need to have facilitative and facilitatory legislation that also targets and encompasses what we see on the horizon, especially if it's happening somewhere else and we know it's only a matter of time before it gets to Barbados. So, as my honourable friend, sir, from St. James said, we started a debate on what, quite frankly, should have been one of the most innocuous amendments that we've made, but as simple as it is, the import of this piece of legislation was seen on the behalf of all who spoke. Sir, even for the one who chimed in and said, replace the C with an S, right? But sir, I thank all who weighed in. I believe that we've taken a great step forward. I know that the legal profession will be happy. I know the business people will be happy. I know that when it is passed, that the persons who require notaries public will be happy. And somebody sent me a message, sir, while I was here, to say, what does this mean for the JPs? There is a role for JPs. I started by saying the JPs have a function to perform within Barbados, and the notaries are for documentation as required outside of Barbados, right? But there is nothing, a lot of the JPs, sir, as well, are shopkeepers. A lot of the JPs in Barbados are business persons, they're in a profession, they may be priests. There's nothing stopping those persons who currently are JPs and who qualify from applying for and doing the training and becoming notaries as well. This is not, that's the beauty of this amendment. This is not capped or exclusive to a certain segment. This is not the aristocracy. This is not the rarefied air of PSs and deputy PSs in certain ministries, not even all. In the public sector, the notaries, and you actually don't even need, the notaries, sir, are appointed on the recommendation of an MP. That's the reality. So it still has a part in the political process. Sorry, not the notaries, the justices of the peace, sir. Forgive me, sir, that was a slip. The justices of the peace are appointed on the recommendations of members of parliament. The notaries do not have, this is an independent application being made to the registrar for which you can get training and you can actually become a notary in your own right without political affiliation, right? So it even makes it simpler in some respect. And this is not diminishing anything. And the point I'm making, quite frankly, for the JPs who want to upgrade to notaries, you can, if you qualify, apply, get the training. When I say upgrade, sir, the JPs have their role to play in Barbados. They have their role in certifying documents, in validating documents, in performing role, in taking oaths in Barbados, in signing warrants in Barbados, right? If they wish to expand their repertoire to be able to deal with documents overseas or expand their capacity to be able to handle a greater catchment of persons and diversify, then that scope exists for them as well with a course of training once they satisfy certain requirements. So I think we've covered a lot of ground here. I am anxious to see this actually reach the end of its whole process and become law. And sir, I am pleased to have been able to and had the privilege to actually pilot this piece of legislation. And having said that, sir, all I can say is that I beg to move that this piece of legislation be read a second time. Thank you.
The question is that this bill be read a second time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Me think the ayes have it.
Sir, I beg that you do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration.
The question is that the Speaker do not leave the chair and the House resolve itself into committee for further consideration of this bill. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, maybe take the bill in two parts. Mr. Chairman, clauses 1 to 10.
Mr. Chairman, I beg to move an amendment to clause 4, C, sir. Sorry, 3, 4C. That, as present reads in terms of the qualification that it possesses at least 10 years professional or business experience, and that should now be 15. So that is clause 3, 4C. So it be 15 for the persons, the professional business persons, in the same way as 15 for the accountants and for the lawyers. And sir, and also in 4.2b, the language is a little bit clumsy, sir, and it should read 2 character references with 1 from among the following persons. And with those amendments, sir, I beg to move that clauses 1 to 10 stand part as amended.
The question is that clauses 1 to 10 as amended stand part. All honourable members in favor, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Clause 11 to 20.
11 to 12. 11 to. Sir, I beg to move that clauses 11 to 20 stand part.
Second that, sir.
The question is that clauses 11 to 20 stand part. All honourable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The first schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
Second that, sir.
The question is that the first schedule be the first schedule of the bill. All honourable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chair, beg to move that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chair, beg to move the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The fourth schedule.
Mr. Chair, beg to move the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The fifth schedule.
Mr. Chair, beg to move the fifth schedule be the fifth schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the fifth schedule be the fifth schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The sixth schedule.
Mr. Chair, beg to move the sixth schedule be the sixth schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the sixth schedule be the sixth schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The seventh schedule.
Mr. Chair, beg to move that the seventh schedule be the seventh schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the seventh schedule be the seventh schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
The eighth schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the eighth schedule be the eighth schedule to the bill.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the eighth schedule be the eighth schedule of the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Just out of abundance of caution, sir, the point raised by the Honourable Member for Christchurch South with the C and the S is being treated as a typo, sir, will be adjusted accordingly. A typographical error. Sir, I beg to move that you do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that I do not report to His Honour the Speaker the passing of one bill in committee. All honourable members in favor, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Yeah, forget. The chairman of committees is reporting the passing of one bill in committee. Honourable for Christchurch East.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that the bill be now read a third time.
May I second that, sir?
Question is that the bill be read a third time. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Notaries Public Act 2024.
May I second that, sir?
The question is that the aforementioned bill be passed and so cited. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This bill is passed and so cited. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the suspension of the House until 6:30 p.m.
The question is that this chamber be suspended until 6:30 p.m. All those honourable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honourable chamber stands suspended until 6:30 p.m.